This is the Food and Justice Podcast with Brenda Sanders. In this episode, my guest host, Jessica Carter, Programming Director at Afro-Vegan Society, will be interviewing me about the inspiration for my work, the challenges I faced during the pandemic, how each of the projects I'm involved with fits into the larger mission of my work, and much more. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Food and Justice with Brenda Sanders. I am so very excited for this episode because I am bringing in a guest host for this episode to interview me. So I just wanted to give our audience an opportunity to learn a little bit about me, the host of the show. And I couldn't think of anyone better to come in and guest host than Jessica Carter, who is the programming director for Afro-Vegan Society and a dear friend. So thank you so much, Jessica, for agreeing to come on and host the show.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me, Brenda.
Thank you. So I'm just going to hand the show over to you and just let you do your thing. So here we go. I'm ready.
All right. So your listeners know you as the host of the Food and Justice Podcast, but your work is so multifaceted. So I'm excited to dig into these questions today so that they can get to know you better. So my first question, I think, is we should start, at the top, which is, why are you doing food justice work?
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. And it's something that a lot of folks may actually not know about me, which is that, food has probably always played a major role in my life, in that for a large portion of my life, I didn't have enough food. When I was growing up, my mother, single mother, raised my sister and me in the housing projects of Baltimore City. And she oftentimes worked, 2 or even 3 low-paying jobs to try to make ends meet. And so, something had to suffer. We oftentimes, she had to make the choice between food and electricity, or, having a place to live and having hot water. And so, I experienced real hunger a lot when I was growing up. And I didn't realize how that had shaped me until much later in life. But, I grew up in the same kinds of neighborhoods that folks in the food justice world are now calling food deserts and food swamps. And so I saw all the things, I experienced all the things that people talk about as being this huge justice issue right now. And so I actually transitioned to plant-based eating in my late teens, and then experienced, all the benefits that come with making that kind of decision. But then I sort of was confronted with the fact that there were many, many other people who had not made that transition and who were suffering in the same ways as everyone was suffering, who was exposed to the food system that I was exposed to growing up, being poor in the inner city. And that information, that confrontation came when I found out about a study that was done by Johns Hopkins that compared 2 neighborhoods in Baltimore City. The one neighborhood was an affluent white neighborhood, and the other one was a poor Black neighborhood. And they just studied the health outcomes for people in these 2 communities. And they found that there was a 20-year difference in life expectancy. And the main factor was the food that these people were eating. And, when I found out about that study, and this was a little over a decade ago, it just hit me like, a sledgehammer, because I knew this. I grew up seeing the health outcomes of folks who were eating the way that I was eating, and just knowing how much I had benefited and how much other people who ate a plant-based diet were benefiting from eating this way, I just decided I needed to do something. I had this wealth of information. I had all these experiences, all these, positive experiences from eating this way. And so I just had to somehow spread that information to other people. And I did. I just started. I guess I just thought that I was going to single-handedly just fix this food justice problem in Baltimore City, because that's how I think. And then I just started. I started out just offering free workshops and classes and cooking demos, and just talking to whoever would listen, community centers, churches, health fairs, wherever I could go and just give away this information for free. And at the time, I didn't realize I was being an activist or doing activism. I just felt like I was bringing a solution to a serious problem. So I would say, my particular background sort of set me up to end up being somebody who does food justice work.
Well, I think that thinking about like your approach to your food activism work and your background, has a really real impact on how you approach the work that you do. And so my next question is that there are so many moving pieces in your work, and how does that all fit together? And what's your ultimate goal in this activism that you do?
Wow, that's a great question. Because there are definitely a lot of moving pieces. There are folks who, sometimes I can't even keep up with all the pieces. So there are a lot of folks who are out there who are trying to follow my work, and they're like, okay, what is this? This too? Okay, how does this fit? And so, yeah, there's a lot. And I think that the reason why there ended up being so many moving pieces is because my work has always been about solving problems. And there are just so many problems. And so when each one sort of pops up, it's just like, okay, yeah, I didn't think about that. So now we have to fix that. And it just kind of expanded out from there. So yeah, the first thing that I realized was that there needed to be some education. I grew up in an environment where, the word vegetarian wasn't even being thrown around. The word, the phrase healthy eating, I never heard anything like that. There were just so many issues to deal with in our community, from crime and poverty and, just all kinds of things that, like, figuring out what the best way to eat was for your health just wasn't really a priority. But I feel like if folks had known more, they would have tried to do things differently. And so that became a major goal for me, is to just educate people. As the older folks would say when I was growing up, when you know better, you can do better. And I've always taken that to heart. And it's always been true in my life that when I was exposed to new information, it changed things for me. And then I was able to do something different. And so education became like the first and foremost thing. But then I was connecting with all these people, and I was educating all these people, and, doing all these education programs and workshops and classes and things like that. And people started coming to me and saying, okay, hey, like, I get it. And I agree that this is bad, but what do I do? Like, how do I even start to change things? And at that point, I realized, people need more than for me to just say, hey, here are all the problems. This is why everything needs to change. And, just kind of kick them out of the nest and say, good luck with that. And so our programming started to change over time based on the needs that people had. And so, I started to need to provide resources and support and community and all these kinds of things. And then it kind of got to a point where it was like, okay, we get all that and we appreciate all these amazing resources, but we can't actually access this food. It's not here. It's not near us. We don't know, we can't go to Whole Foods. That's not an option. And so then that became the next sort of problem that needed to be solved. And so that's just, but I guess the ultimate goal, and I've thought a lot about this over the last few years, the ultimate goal of all this work is to prove that a plant-based food system is a viable food system. And, because I, in my heart, believe that we don't have to have a food system based on animals, based on animal foods. That is the food system that has developed over time. And that is the current, system that is the most profitable. But it is that the animal-based food system is doing such harm on every single level, from, the environment to, animal abuse to worker exploitation to, just health issues. Like on every level, the animal-based food system is failing us. And I know that a plant-based food system solves so many of our global problems. I mean, there's actual data to back that up. And so the ultimate goal of my work is to demonstrate that a plant-based food system is doable and that it will solve many, many of the current problems that we faced around the globe. So,
as I was listening to you talk about all these facets of your work, it really was poignant that, like how your work evolves. So it starts with education, but then really offering a ton of experiential resources and opportunities for people to actually have a chance to adopt a lifestyle that really will benefit them in their communities. And I think that's so important because oftentimes, I won't say oftentimes, but I mean, I know I've been in scenarios where people talk about community-based work and think of it as being small. But when you're doing this community-based activism, you have the opportunity to really shift the perspective, shift the behavior, shift the outlooks of a whole community of people. And so in terms of targeting individuals versus targeting communities, I mean, I feel like that's super, super, super impactful because I mean, that's what institutions are responsive to, not individuals, but groups of people. And so I feel like, the community work you've done thus far has been like really amazing to see the changes you've been able to spearhead by being present and being responsive to the needs and the requests of the people in the communities where you're rooted. So that's amazing, Brenda.
Thank you. And can I just, you sparked something in my head by saying, what you just said, because it also is changing culture. Mm-hmm. And that is such a big part of the work that I'm doing. You hit the nail right on the head. A lot of folks, especially in the funding community, look at community-based activism as just too small and not worth their time. And they want to, see things, on a grander scale. But one of the things that those folks, because they don't come from where we're from, they're not necessarily from our community. They don't understand necessarily like how our community works, right? And how culture plays such a huge role in any kind of shift, right? And so one of the things that I've tried to get across to folks is, with marginalized communities, it may seem like things are happening at a small scale, but the way that we're all connected, the way we're all communal, the way we form, these networks amongst ourselves, any kind of cultural shift catches on like wildfire. And before you know it, it is huge. And see, people like, me and you and other activists who are specifically working within our community, we know that that is the case. And, one of the questions that I get a lot now when I'm being interviewed is, there was the study that came out that said that African Americans are the fastest growing community of people transitioning to veganism. And everybody wants to know, like, why is this? How is this happening? What's going on? And the answer I give is, it's the work. It's the work that I'm doing. It's the work that Afro-Vegan Society is doing. It's the work that, folks on the ground are doing across the country and even across the globe. It catches on, and before you know it, there's just this snowball effect. And like, it's just gotten everywhere. And that is the power of community-based activism in marginalized communities. And so, yeah, thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront, because I definitely wanted to make that point. It's a great point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think looking at how you're looking at all of the progress you've been able to make with the community-based model work that you're doing, and then shifting that to a national scale, could you talk to us a little bit behind the founding of Afro-Vegan Society, and what is the work of that organization?
Wow. Yeah, that's it. Woo, AVS. So I look at all of the projects that I'm currently working on almost like a child, I guess. And so if I was going to talk about Afro-Vegan Society from that perspective, I would say that Afro-Vegan Society is the child that I didn't know I wanted until it was there, right? Because, someone came to me and asked me to found this organization. And I was already like actively involved in a lot of other work. And, I was asked, I was told, that there needed to be a Black vegan organization. That this is a thing that needs to exist. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right. And I really hope that somebody somewhere will start this organization, because I completely agree that this needs to exist. But, because of the way that I operate, just knowing that this was a thing that needed to exist, and knowing that this was work that was worth doing, I finally I gave in. I was like, okay, here we go. And and founded Afro-Vegan Society. And I mean, I have never looked back. I've never regretted it. And especially because of you, Jessica, and the rest of the team members. AVS just has the most amazing all-star team that has just come together, and we're just doing the most miraculous, magical work that I have ever done. And I couldn't be happier, I couldn't be prouder of the work that we're able to do, and especially with everything that happened with COVID and having to sort of transition to a virtual platform. I mean, the number of people we've been able to reach by going virtual, it's just been astounding. I have been overjoyed and just amazed at how exponentially our reach has grown. And it's just, it's great. We're able to have this virtual programming, these classes, your amazing cooking demos, Jessica, just like bringing the people in and showing them, show and tell. And that's just such an important aspect of this work. It's not just about tell, but it's also about show. And so that has just added such a wonderful dimension to the work that we're doing. And, things like the upcoming Afro-Vegan National Summit, it's just like bringing together these powerhouses, these amazing Black vegans who are doing all kinds of work and writing books and doing lectures and, all these things, and just having an opportunity to bring them all together to one place and have their brilliance be shared with our community. It's that kind of thing that Afro-Vegan Society has been able to bring into the world. that makes me so overjoyed that I said yes. And then that you said yes to being a part of this work. So thank you so much for that as well.
I'm also so happy to be able to do this work at this stage in my career, having worked in so many different aspects of nonprofit work. This just feels like a coming together of a lot of things that I saw were important in the world, and that, just looking at the way that the world is going, our culture is going, society is moving in, it seems like the most timely, poignant work I could be doing at this time. So it's amazing to be a part of the team. In bringing things a little bit together. This is a bit of a sidebar, Brenda, but could you tell us, like, what is Afro-Veganism and just the connection between Afro-Veganism and food justice for the people who may not be familiar with that terminology?
Yes, absolutely. So, I wanted to be a part of creating the culture of Afro-Veganism. The word had been sort of thrown around here and there, but there wasn't, that I could find, there wasn't like an actual accepted definition for it. There were some cookbooks, there were, some things, some folks talking about some things, but I just felt like, veganism is one thing in and of itself, and it has meaning and it has, worth all on its own. But being a Black person who identified as a vegan and who was having this experience as a vegan that was very particular to being a Black person, I just felt like this was an experience that needed to be defined, that needed to be acknowledged, and that needed to be lifted up, right? And so, Afro-veganism is a very particular experience that people from, the most marginalized of communities experience in trying to live in this way in a world that in so many different ways does not support, and to the contrary, actually works against this way of living. And, as people who come from a marginalized community, we understand that, connecting with each other, supporting each other, and being strength for each other, being that strength, being that, that structure that's holding each other up, it is vital to being able to survive. And if you're not from a marginalized community, if you don't have a marginalized identity, you could not possibly understand how much it takes, what it means to live a marginalized existence, to live an exploited existence, to live an oppressed existence. And then within that, to try to do something different, right? So you are othering yourself even further by, living in a different way that runs counter even to your own community. And so I knew that Black folks who were having a Black experience, who were also living vegan, needed to have a support system that specifically acknowledged the very particular challenges that come with living in the world that way. And one of those challenges does sort of revolve around this idea of food security, food justice, and food access, especially, right? And so, so it all sort of comes together because food is such a big part of the human existence. It just is. There's some wild number out there about how much time in a day we spend engaging with food, whether that be just thinking about what we're going to eat, actually gathering the food, preparing the food, and then eating the food. There's a lot of time that human beings spend a day. And I'm obviously talking about people who have access to food, because there are many people in the US and around the globe who don't have access to food. And so that's a completely different experience, right? But it still sort of revolves around food, around this act of eating food. And so it only makes sense that even within the context of veganism, that food would become such a major theme, even within a lifestyle that really is supposed to be a lot more about animal exploitation than it even is about the personal experience of consuming food. Veganism, the term vegan was coined back in the 40s, and it was a type of vegetarianism, or like strict vegetarianism. It was a type of vegetarianism that excludes all forms of animal products and animal exploitation. So there, at its inception, it was about animals, right? But it's not it's not surprising that so much of the focus would have become on food, because food is such a huge focus in general within the human experience. So I hope I was able to illuminate at least a little bit what Afro-Veganism is, and why an organization like why I felt like an organization like Afro-Vegan Society needed to exist.
I think it's interesting, especially at the end, when you kind of talked a little bit about, mainstream veganism, and comparing that to Afro-Veganism, because mainstream veganism is a stripping down, right? And it's like an abstinence because of beliefs, right? So we don't want to harm animals. So it's just a stripping back of the things that we consume out of respect for animals and a desire not to harm animals. But when you think about Afro-Veganism, it is something that builds upon one another, right? So as opposed to pulling back, it comes together because it looks at all these intersections of injustice that marginalized people experience, and thinking not how do I corner myself in and pinpoint, but how do I broaden my perspective and look for the interconnections and interactions of things. So I think that when you talk about culture and you talk about like how influential Black people are in this society, like it makes sense why we're so influential in so many aspects of life, because our perspective has to be broad, because we have to be aware of all these, intersecting, layered and just interacting issues all the time. It's just a part of our awareness. This is the baseline part of our awareness. So I think that, it's amazing to hear you talk about the connection between these things and how it influences your work, because your work can't help but be dynamic, Brenda, when you are constantly incorporating all these levels and perspectives into everything that you're doing.
Food and Justice is made possible with support from Defund Big Meat, a grassroots effort to encourage strategic collaboration across all sectors of global justice. Find more information about Defund Big Meat at www.defundbigmeat.org. And A Well-Fed World, an international hunger relief and food justice organization advancing plant-based foods and farming to create a nourished and climate-friendly future. Find out more about A Well-Fed World at www.awfw.org. Thank you.
So with that, let's talk a little bit more about your work in Baltimore. So you founded a community center in Baltimore City. What have you been able to accomplish in that space?
Yes. Thrive Baltimore Community Resource Center. A big project with a big name and a big mission. Just in keeping with the, these are all my children themes, I would say that Thrive Baltimore is more so like the child that I fought really hard for and really, really wanted really, really bad. And I was not disappointed, when that child came into being, right? Because I knew that we needed a base of operations. I was running hither and yon, back and forth, up and down, around and round, just wherever anybody would have me. I would take my little cooking demo equipment and, all my blender and this and that, and I would just travel. I was exhausted. And I just felt like I wasn't really connecting the dots. Even though I would go this place and, touch some folks, and go that place and reach some different folks. And, there wasn't any kind of sense of community that was being created. And I just wanted to have a space, a place, one stationary base of operations where everything could sort of come together, and, we could bring folks together in this space. And when an opportunity presented itself in this building, I, of course, just jumped right on it, having no idea what that even meant. How much responsibility having a community center would end up being, and but also not realizing how much of an impact we would be able to make out of that space as well, because I never really assumed that everything would just take off and just like a rocket, into space. That was always like a hope, but I'm also a realist. And so every time things would just take off, I would almost be taken aback, right? And so we started doing these events, and they started out small, but then, I would just ask people hey, you just benefited from this information. You just, had a great time and learned a lot. And, you're even able to take some things home with you. Make sure you tell a friend, make sure you tell a family member, tell your coworkers. We don't want to be a secret. We want everybody to know, what's going on, so that everybody can benefit. And then people did. They did do that. And before you knew it, our events at Thrive Baltimore were busting out of the seams. And we're talking about a 2-story, building with multiple meeting spaces. And every single event was just packed to the rafters, because we were always giving freely. It was always this is life-saving information on so many levels. And I want to make sure that every single person, even if I was going to charge $1, there's somebody out there who doesn't have that, And so over the years in doing this work at Thrive Baltimore, many a person said to me, you should charge for this, because, people appreciate things more when you charge for it. And I know that is a philosophy, and there probably is some truth to that, but I always felt if there is one person who this information is not accessible to because they just don't have the money, then I am failing. And so I just stuck to it. And so we were offering all this amazing programming out of this space. I mean, back to back. It was, a cooking demo, followed by a big holiday event, followed by a food tasting, followed by a film screening, it was just constant. And it only really slowed down when COVID hit, that was the thing that sort of took us out. And I keep saying us because there is a team of people. I mean, folks think that somehow I am, I don't know, Wonder Woman or Supergirl or somebody, and can actually do all this work on my own. It is not true. Every single project has a wonderful team of people who, believe in the work, believe in the mission, and work together to make it happen. And so, it was a blow. It was a blow to the community that we had been building. It was a blow to us as a team to not be able to bring people together, for it to actually be putting people in danger to bring them together, when our goal was to, to encourage health and wellness and, vitality and all these things. And so we had to sort of shut things down. And so it's been, well over a year that operations over at Thrive Baltimore have been shut down. And, we've had all the kind of heartbreaking emails and messages They're like, oh, I just miss you guys so much. And, when are we going to be able to get together again? And it's like, hopefully soon, hopefully soon. I definitely look forward to doing that kind of community building work out of that space. It was just such a wonderful, fulfilling, like, I don't know, just fantastic time, to be honest. Everybody had a great time. Everybody was really involved. Everybody appreciated the work. And so I'm definitely looking forward to getting back to that community level work. So.
Okay, so I think that this next question also builds on to just the power of bringing people together and how impactful that can be. You are part of one of the most successful events, I don't know, in the East Coast in the US, which is Vegan Soulfest. So this is like one of the largest veg fests in the country. And can you tell me about what created it and just has the experience been of conceptualizing and running the Vegan Soulfest?
Yes, Vegan Soulfest. Vegan Soulfest is the child that I underestimated and that just exceeded all my expectations. I mean, it's the brainchild of Naja Wright Brown from the land of Kush and myself. And, we just kind of came together one day, oh my gosh, 7, 8 years ago. And, we had both been vegan for years. We were both sort of spinning in our own, solar systems, doing what we were doing. And we were just sitting together, having a meal and just brainstorming, like, what is something that we could do that would be giving back to our community, that would bring people together, make sure that folks got educated, but also had a good time and felt good. And it was just a festival, like obviously a festival, like just sort of checked all these boxes. And so we just started playing. We're very much alike in that we kind of just jump into things, both feet, and we're just like, okay, let's do it. And so the very first Vegan Soul Fest in 2014, we organized that thing in 4 months. And then we had the festival, and it was just like, I personally was hoping that maybe 400 or 500 people would show up. We would have some vendors, we would have some food, we would have some speakers, and it could just be sort of a labor of love to the community. And then the very first year, we were the space that we had the event, we were busting out of it, literally, not even just figuratively. The festival ended up out on the sidewalk because there were just so many people, and like over 1,200 people came out. The newspaper came out. It was just like this phenomenon, and I was just like, oh, okay, so that's what this is. I mean, we had been discouraged from calling it Vegan Soul Fest because it was like, oh, this is Baltimore and nobody is gonna want to go to something with the word vegan in it, and just all these things. Our community doesn't care about their health. Our community doesn't care about the environment. And Naja and I, we didn't listen to any of it. We just were like, we're doing this. This is happening, and it's going to be great. And then it was even better than we could have hoped. And then every year since then, it just grew bigger and bigger and bigger until the last year that we had Vegan Soul Fest, over 13,000 people showed up. And, if it wasn't for COVID, I mean, maybe we will be up to 100,000. I don't know. I mean, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and more popular. And I mean, the number of people we're able to touch, the number of people we're able to reach, from the speakers that we bring in to talk about, all manner of health and wellness. And, we've brought in athletes, we've brought in, all kinds of folks, authors, and people to just talk about the different aspects of vegan living. We, of course, have our running cooking demos. We have entertainment, of course. And then just like lots and lots of vendors, just like people selling all manner of vegan food, clothing, jewelry, da da da. It's just, and everybody who talks about Vegan Soulfest, from the vendors to the attendees, even to like the folks who set up the stage or who, you know, pull the bags out of the trash, everybody is like, it's such a vibe. Like Vegan Soulfest is such a, like, just a good time. It's a good vibe. Everybody feels good, you know, about the festival. Never any drama, knock on wood, you know, it's just a good time. It's just a good, clean time. And it's just the most awesome thing. And Naja and I, you know, we work really hard to make it happen every year. And I am really, really fingers crossed. You know, we're planning on 2022 being the next Vegan Soul Fest. So, you know, if everything just gets better, you know, and we start to move out of this crisis situation, then yeah, Vegan Soul Fest will be back on, and I am definitely looking forward to that.
Well, I can say that I've done cooking demos. I've tabled at over a dozen vegan festivals. And yes, Vegan Soul Fest is definitely a vibe. I did a cooking demo in, I think it was 2019, 2018
Yeah.
or 2019.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the audience was so engaged. I feel like that's like the main thing I remember from that part of the experience. The audience was so engaged. They were taking notes. They were asking questions. You know, that's for me my preferred style of like teaching is like interactive. So like ask questions as you go. Like they're super engaged. They're eager to learn. You can see that like it's so helpful when you're educating people, when you see that they're engaged and they're trying to figure out how to implement. And these people were ready for that. They were eating the samples. They were coming back after they tried the samples. Like, how'd you do that again? You know what I mean? So it was just like, I feel good that I was prepared because all these recipes I printed off, everyone is taking them. You know what I mean? Like people want products lists. And so I feel like people underestimate. Well, I don't think they do as much now because, you know, that study came out a few years ago about African Americans being the fastest growing group of vegans. But like, I feel like for a while, people underestimated the desire in our community to really learn about this way of living and eating. But I've seen the complete opposite. The most engaged community I've ever presented in front of have been Black folks. You know what I mean? Yeah. And part of it, I think, also is the fact that, like, you know, it's so important to teach to your audience, and Vegan Soul Fest does an amazing job of creating an event for the audience that they intend to participate and benefit from it. And I went into that situation thinking about, like, what can I make that people are going to be excited to make? Because, you know, I'm incorporating cultural flavors and ingredients and things like that. So Vegan Soul Fest is like top of the line in terms of like speaking and connecting with the audience that they're trying to give the resources who need it the most to make this major life change that can help them. So super, super, super impactful event, Brenda.
Thank you.
Very impactful.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So on to another venture, Brenda, because it's limitless with you. On to another venture. Tell us about the Greener Kitchen and what role does it play in your activism?
I would say that the Greener Kitchen is, out of all the projects, the Greener Kitchen is a labor of love with an emphasis on the labor. I mean, the labor involved. The Greener Kitchen, I would say, was another one of those things that was never really planned. Certainly, I nor most of our team ever planned on like having a retail food space. It just wasn't. It wasn't a part of the mission. It wasn't a part of any of our goals. As a matter of fact, I know how much work goes into food service. You know, I've worked food service jobs in my younger years, and it's a lot. It's a lot, and I would never have wished that on anybody, certainly not myself. And so, you know, it just got to a point where people were like, we need this food. We don't have access to this food. In general, we can't afford this food, but you know, you've made all the points. You've convinced us we need this food. And so, you know, on the one hand, it's like, well, you know, you can get access to fruits and vegetables. You can get access to produce, right? You can figure out a way to like grow cucumbers on your balcony. I don't know. You can connect with other people in your community and do a community garden, which is another project that we did a few years ago. We helped to build a community garden in Penn North, one of the most marginalized communities in Baltimore City, and the community itself ended up taking over the community garden. So that was an amazing project. But at the end of the day, asking people to go from eating, fast food and convenience food and all these things to now you're going to eat pots of beans every night, it is just like not terribly realistic. I mean, preferably you want people to just get there. Like you were eating McDonald's yesterday, but guess what? Now you eat nothing but black beans, rice, and collard greens. And that is, what you eat every day, all day. You are just going to, just have the purest, most pristine diet ever. But we found that just wasn't realistic, that people still needed that convenience because of the way that the world is set up, because of the way the workforce is set up, because of the way capitalism is set up, to be honest, and because of the way just like, family structures are set up. Folks were not having the time and, the even energy and inclination to just go from I can pick up a value meal to now I'm spending 4 hours in the kitchen preparing this vegan meal. It just wasn't realistic. And so we saw this gap where people were saying we need vegan convenience food that we can afford. But then, of course, we had to do it in a particular way because our commitment is to the health and wellness of the community. So when the team got together and said, okay, are we gonna make food? Like, are we doing this? Okay, fine. We're gonna craft these recipes, but it has to be made from, the whole foods. It has to be made from the best ingredients. We can't just be putting any old thing out there. We can't be, just putting a bunch of chemicals together and like the same crap that they were eating before. Like, we can't do that to people. And so we got in the lab and we crafted, these substitutes, so to speak, that could replace the foods that folks were taking out of their diet. So plant-based meats, plant-based cheeses, plant-based mayos and spreads, like deli salads and all these things. And that was a major goal for us, was to just sort of plug in to the food system in such a way that people could transition from the convenience foods that they had been eating that were, animal-based, and sort of seamlessly transition into these plant-based, more convenient foods, while also teaching people about the benefit of eating whole food, healthy, plant-based foods. So that's sort of, and it's been a lot. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of sacrifice. And we sort of have it down to a science where we have like the carry out side where people can come in and get a cheesesteak, or some vegan fried chicken, or, a pulled barbecue sandwich, or whatever, like kind of convenient foods that they love and that they remember. But they can also go to the grocery side and just like purchase the shaved steak and take it home and make cheesesteaks for their family. And that's going to be a little bit more economical, and, it's going to go further and that kind of thing. So we've sort of merged the two things. And I think that we've come up with a system that still fulfills our mission, which is to make these foods more accessible, but also just gives people a delicious bomb cheesesteak when they want one, So that's been the work of the Greener Kitchen. And I'm really excited about what we've been able to do and how we've been able to be such a resource to people in the community. We're actually the Greener Kitchen is located in a community called Pigtown. And the reason why it's called Pigtown is that it is actually the community where they used to run the pigs through from the train at one end of the community through the town, like down Main Street, and we're on Main Street, by the way, to the slaughterhouses where they would then slaughter the pigs for meat. And I just, think it's really interesting that we ended up doing, making plant-based food in a community called Pigtown with that kind of history, and then making this plant-based food available to the mostly low-income Black people in the community. So it's been a great experience and a great opportunity and quite the labor of love.
Well, I mean, love makes the labor less painful, it's a beautiful thing when you can have love in the labor, for sure.
Food and Justice is proud to be partnering with Afro-Vegan Society, Thrive Baltimore Community Resource Center, My Two Foods, and Better Food Foundation.
So, Brenda, spare time, do you have any?
I'm sorry. Well, I don't know what those two words mean in that order. Spare time?
It looks like you must have some, because now you're hosting a podcast, the Food and Justice podcast that we're listening to right now. So
my goodness.
Please tell your audience, let the people know, how does this podcast fit into the mission of all the other work that you're doing?
Yeah. This is, if somebody had told me even just a year ago that I would be doing a weekly podcast, I would have fallen out on the floor laughing hysterically. I mean, honestly, how? Where would that even fit into everything? But so some folks from this campaign called Defund Big Meat came to me and explained the campaign and said that they felt like a podcast like Food and Justice could be a great addition to the overall theme of what is trying to be accomplished with the campaign. And I totally agreed. And it took me a minute, Jessica. It took me a minute to decide that I would actually do this, because I was just like, how? Honestly, but at the same time, I knew that a project that sort of brought people together from all over, from all different corners of the country and even globally. Hopefully, I'm looking to interview some folks who are around the world who are doing work within the food justice arena. So stay tuned for that. But to just be able to spotlight work like mine, work that complements mine, work that's completely different from mine, but that is still so important and so worthwhile. And, to be able to bring those people on and talk to them about what they're doing and what brought them to be doing the work and what kind of impact they're having. I mean, it was too great of an opportunity to turn down. And it's been great. I feel like, with the show, I've been able to even open up or initiate conversations about things that maybe people weren't even really talking about or didn't quite know about, or maybe had wondered about, like the show with Kanab Kasturia, who has an organization that looks at the food system within the prison system. We all know that it must be bad, but I think that probably none of us knew just how bad. And so that particular episode, it was just such a moving and impactful episode for me. And all of the episodes were moving and impactful in their own way, and continue to be. And hopefully this one will be too, I don't know. But, it's a great opportunity. It's well worth the absolute utter lack of sleep that I currently get. And I'm glad to be doing it, and I hope to be able to continue to do it. We're going to be wrapping up the first season in the next couple weeks. And then I'll be able to sort of look back and see what has been accomplished and sort of get motivated for season 2. So yeah, I appreciate you being a part of that process and being here, hosting and interviewing me, giving me an opportunity to talk to the audience and share some bits of myself that they may not even have known about. So thank you for that. I appreciate you so much, and just definitely look forward to continuing with the show.
I mean, this has been great because I feel like since we started working together, I definitely got to know you quite a bit, but I've learned even more about you during this interview. So I'm so happy to be here serving as your guest interviewer. And to wrap it up, this last question is about another foray of yours into a different form of media, and that's film. So there's a brand new film coming out called They're Trying to Kill Us, and you were featured. So can you tell us what this film is about and what contribution you made to it?
Yes. I almost forgot. How on earth? This film is looming quite large in my life right now because it is going to be released on the same day that this show is released, and it's just a big deal. It just really is, and not just because I personally am playing such a large role in the film. I had no idea when the filmmakers John Lewis and Keegan Kuhn came and asked me to be interviewed for the film. I'm everywhere. I'm just always. So I was like, sure, great, it'll be great. And so we did the shoot, and I thought it went well. Great guys, great mission. And then I saw one of the first cuts of the film, and I was like, wow, I'm really in this film. And the film is just, it's star-studded. It's just like there's all these folks who are like a big deal, and here I am, just like me, Brenda Sanders from Baltimore, playing a pretty big role in the film, and so I guess my expertise in just kind of understanding the food system, the ways in which the food system negatively targets particular communities. And I'm speaking, of course, of low-income Black and Brown communities, the ways in which people are suffering because of that. Like those are the kinds of themes that I explore in the film, and sort of give, lend my voice and my expertise to that conversation. And that's what the film, it's a very provocative title. I love the title because it sort of just gets right in there and gets to the point. But it's such an in-depth look into society itself. And, John Lewis's story is just so compelling. And I don't even want to give any details about that because, I don't want to give anything away. But, his story, and then including me in that, was just such an honor. And, the fact that I was able to contribute knowledge, which is a big part of just my work and what I do, to this particular project was, it was a great opportunity. But I still was kind of like, they're gonna cut me from this film. Like, it wasn't a like reflection of them at all. But I was just looking at like all these stars, and I was just like, but I'm nobody, And they're gonna cut me, and I was convinced that they would cut me from this film all the way up until the film was complete, and I got to see the film, and I saw that not only did they not cut me from the film, but they put me in it more. They like expanded my my participation in the film even more so than with one of the earlier cuts, and I was just like, whoa, this is amazing. And so I want everybody to watch the film. It very much is sort of centered around marginalized communities and gives voice to that experience. And I think that certainly, Black folks have to watch this film. POC folks have to watch this film. It's gonna be a cultural fixture. I can already see that. So you have to see it. You have to know what everybody's talking about. When it inevitably gets a lot of buzz, but not just Black and brown and indigenous folks. Everybody needs to see it. Every single person needs to see this film and really just delve in to this cultural experience. It's just so important. And I'm going to be encouraging people. I've already been encouraging people. I'm going to use the Afro-Vegan Society platform. I'm going to, use my own personal platform to encourage people to watch the film, because I think it really is such a powerful contribution to this story, to this food justice story. And so They're Trying to Kill Us. It is released on 11/11. It's an important film, and if you go to the Afro-Vegan Society website, if you go to the Food and Justice website, if you go to the Brenda Sanders.info website, anywhere where I am, you'll be able to download the film and watch it. And it's exciting stuff. So thank you so much for asking about that, because my mind, I was already ready to be and thank you so much, everybody. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. And I just want to say thank you for all of your labor. Thank you for all this work that you're doing to bring these issues about vegan food justice to the forefront and continuing to push to shift our food systems. So with all the work that you're doing, Brenda, how can people support you in pushing your work forward?
Ooh, I love that question. That's one of my favorite questions. I wish more people would ask. No, lots of people do ask. I would say, this is probably the most basic answer that everybody gives, but this work costs money. It does. All of it costs money, from, the education to the food production to, the festival, all of it costs money. And because we make sure to make things accessible and affordable to people, we need all the help that we can get. And we do have a few organizations that love us and support our work, whether it's, Afro-Vegan Society or Vegan Soulfest or, whatever it is. There are folks who do support. We can always use more support. So on the Afro-Vegan Society page, which is AfroVeganSociety.org, there's a donate button. I encourage people to donate anything, $5, $10, $10,000, whatever you have. We need help. We need support. There's also my Patreon. My Patreon has sort of evolved from just a place where people who love me and support my work can just throw me a few dollars, to now it's just a hub where folks can donate each month, and that basically just supports everything that I'm involved with, because again, I'm just out here just throwing myself in all these different directions. So that support makes it so that I'm able to do those things. I think there's also a donate button on the BrendaSanders.info website. So that's one of the major things that people can do to support. And then, of course, there is volunteering. If folks have a specialized skill or just passion and zeal, and want to be a part of doing great work, there are ways to volunteer both virtually and locally. So if folks want to, contact me, whether it be through the Patreon page, through Afro-Vegan Society, on Facebook or whatever, there are ways that folks can plug in. There are always ways that folks can plug in. We always need help, because when you're doing work on this scale, there's just never enough people, and that's just the truth. So Jessica knows. So, so yeah, those are the ways that people can support the work that I'm doing. Thanks for asking. All right, and on that note, I would like to thank Jessica for being a part of this experience, for agreeing to come on and guest host, and asking me these amazing questions that gave me an opportunity to let the audience get to know me better, which I have definitely been wanting to do. So thank you so much, Jessica, for being here.
You're very welcome, Brenda.
And I would like to thank everybody who tuned in to this episode. I mean, it's about me. I don't know if it was a chore to tune in. I don't know if you even cared about all this stuff, but hopefully it's been informative. Hopefully it's been fun. And I just would love to invite you to continue to enjoy the show, continue to tune into the show. We have a lot more to come, and have a great day. Oh, check out the film, They're Trying to Kill Us. It's going to be released on 11/11. They're trying to kill us.com. And take care, and see you next time.
This has been the Food and Justice Podcast with Brenda Sanders. Join me next week as I talk with Dr. Milton Mills, a plant-based critical care physician featured in the films What the Health and They're Trying to Kill Us, to talk about the Defund Big Meat campaign. If you're watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and share it. Subscribe to our channel and click the bell to request all notifications. Or if you're on Facebook, please like and share the video, like our page, and invite your friends. You can also subscribe to the show as a podcast via our website at fjpodcast.com. Support the show. Visit our website to find out how you can become a patron. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next week.